Now, Peter, I cannot see you. Is that correct?
Yes, my computer does not have a camera.
Okay.
So I just have a microphone here. I'm promised I'm wearing pants. So there's that.
Oh, hey, no, Peter, I work as a publisher, as the editor of the magazine. I
Yeah.
actually work out of my home because today's
Oh, nice.
technology. So all the stuff that's happened has not affected me at all.
Well,
So,
that's good news. That's cool.
yeah.
I just got off of talking with Jude for like 45 minutes because we're both talkers. I can't say it's just him. I like to talk too, but man, he's a really impressive kid, have to say.
I tell you what, we give these awards every year. This is probably the one I wanted to do for well, I've only known about it for about a year, but ever since I learned about those two, I said, this is a story and they need to be awarded some way.
Yeah. Well, let's get right into it. Cause,
Okay.
a little bit of background about me. I went to journalism school at Mizzou.
Cool.
I grew up wrestling. I think I started in 4th grade, went through my senior year of high school. I wasn't like, some dynamite kid. I don't think I never qualified for state, that kind of thing. And then, I did a good amount of wrestling coverage, in school at Missouri. And then my first job was in Lincoln, Nebraska for about 3 years. Covered the Huskers. And I went down to West Texas for 2 years where they don't have wrestling.
No.
Like the high schools don't even have it. It's not a thing. And that was like dreadful for me.
Right.
And then a sports director job came open and I got to move to State College. And I was like, oh, perfect. I'd love to cover Penn State. So
well, good.
I've been here for about 2 years now. And I think when you guys made the announcement, so I've kind of always knew that there was like a Wrestling Journalist of the Year award, like I've heard of it before, especially I think I was looking into Jeff Byers. We might do a story with him down the line. And so I know he's won it and like he, everyone knows how good he is with what he does. So give me a little bit of history on this award and kind of what it means to the wrestling community.
Well, okay. Win Magazine was created in 1984. So we just finished our 26th year? No, excuse me, 94. We're in our 26th year. Well, I think between the publisher, a guy named Mike Chapman, and myself and Brian Van Kelly, the publisher, we always believed that the sport needed to be promoted. And at the time it was formed, there were a lot more journalists. Newspapers were big. So we felt like we wanted to honor those who really had a passion for wrestling as a journalist, and not necessarily to say all the good things about wrestling, but tell the story of wrestling. And so that's really how it was formed or created. And so, like you said, every year we try to find some type of journalists. Sometimes they're broadcasters, sometimes they're photographers. The unique thing about Jude and Sam is they're our first podcasters, and just the fact they're so young at 16 and 13 years old is just blows me away. But they're very professional. I'm 65 years old. I've been in this business for over 40 years, and I've started to worry about journalism.
Yeah.
And so for me to see these young people, show up it was at the Final X Rutgers a year ago where I first saw them. And it was actually Sam who I saw the first time, and this little kid who's half my size, he's sticking a little microphone up to talking to these athletes. And he was so confident. He knew what he was asking. And it was so good. And then eventually I met Jude at that event too, briefly, but I got a chance to see a little bit of his personality, which is so different from Sam's. But together, the two of them make such a great podcast team.
So I think that choosing, these guys that are so young, and I think that the biggest point to make is that how deserving were they?
Well, I'll tell you what, when I first saw it, I thought it was just a little thing that these kids did as like a middle school or whatever project. But I actually went on and I started listening to podcasts. And I was just amazed by their research, that how much and just their passion. And I mean, I found them to talking about something I didn't even know.
Right, me too.
This is a full-time profession. And when that started happening, then I started tuning in more and more. And then, then eventually they start having more national guests on there. And of course, I talked to David Taylor
Mhm.
from there. Jude is one of his wrestlers, his club wrestlers.
Mhm.
And of course, David spoke very highly of him. And just to get a chance to talk to these kids, and I'll be honest, I know I call them kids because really, but as a journalist, they're as almost as professional as anybody my age.
What kind of message does this kind of send for the future that maybe it's kind of part like industry to the point where, we're at a point where the internet has kind of leveled the playing field and for as
Yes.
far as competition goes for everything.
Yes.
And, we can talk about the internet and journalism all day. But when two teenagers are able to put together something that's polished,
Right.
which that was the biggest thing I was looking at. I was like, man, this is a full professional website. They have a YouTube presence. They're doing social media. And I'm like,
Yes.
Man,
they know how to market.
Yeah.
And in fact, what's so unique to me is the way they market their product. I wish today's publishers would take some of their spirit and try to come ways to market newspapers, television, other what we would call the old time journalism.
Mhm.
But now they're creating a new medium with these podcasts, and I'm not sure if that's the future, but at least but I believe there's many. I'm old school, okay? So I still believe in print journalism. I love it. I just think we need to find a way, mix the types of mediums, and I think they'll all flourish.
What kind of hope or message does this kind of send for the future of wrestling?
Oh, for wrestling or for journalism?
We'll start with wrestling, and then kind of how does that feed in the way wrestling will be covered?
Well, okay, one reason for wrestling, okay, you were a wrestler, okay, you understand. Sometimes wrestlers get pegged as being introverts, okay, do not learn how to express themselves, which is one reason why the sport started to suffer, because it did not market itself. And to see these young people who are wrestlers and very good wrestlers know how to express themselves, that will help the sport. I mean, because they are competitive. What they do on the mat, God willing, they'll always be successful. But I think they'll go beyond that because of, so I guess what I'm saying is because of their communication skills, they will help spread the word of wrestling. And once, as you know, once somebody gets hooked up with wrestling, they cannot let go.
Yeah. I'll kind of finish with this. What is your lasting impression of these two guys? Like when you think of them, what do you think of?
Just no fear factor, that being so young, they understand, maybe naively at first, but they understand their role with journalism, they will not call themselves the journalists. They made a point of telling me, but I said, you're wrong, because you guys communicate a message and you tell the story of wrestling. To me, that's a journalist. And so I think, I guess just their presence, and especially with adults, they have no problem talking to adults, which I think is great. I just hope it continues.
Do you think there's anything else I should have asked you?
Oh boy. No. Did you get a chance to visit with Sam at all?
I did not. No. So we're kind of just going with the local kid.
Okay. Well, because as you know, their story, they've only been together as people one time. And that was at that Final X event I met. Otherwise, everything they do is 900 miles away from each other. Sam lives in Memphis, and Jude lives in State College. Okay. But yet, and that's how they met. They met on a Twitter account, and then they expanded from there. But every week, they get together. And now that people can see them on YouTube, it's pretty unique. So I'm fascinated by what they're doing.
I'm fascinated too. And I mean, I covered Jude's high school matches, like I have video of him wrestling, so, yeah. I think I saw the announcement like a couple weeks ago, or like when you guys made it, and then I had like, yeah, I'm sure you're aware with all the lingo with TV news and like sweeps happened. I had to do a whole
Yes.
bunch of like COVID-19 Penn State money football stories, and
Yes.
I forgot about it, and here I am getting around to it.
Well,
CDT, the local paper, did a nice job with it.
good.
One thing I noticed when I came here is that, everywhere I've worked, I've kind of been the wrestling guy.
Yes.
And I guess I'm still that guy from my like outlet,
Yes.
but the wrestling media here in State College, Central PA, is so knowledgeable. And
Oh. Oh.
I'm
Oh.
just like, man, like I'm learning so much just being
Oh yeah.
here.
Well,
So
I'm located out of Iowa City. That's where I
nice.
live by. So between State College and Iowa City, Iowa, are basically the two meccas when it comes to
Yeah.
wrestling. With the knowledge, just the interest in the sport, the knowledge of the sport.
Yeah, I grew up in Jefferson City, Missouri.
Oh, yes.
And
Oh, yes.
gosh, when I was in high school, we went to team camps at Mizzou, Oklahoma State, Iowa, and Iowa
Oh,
State when Kale was there.
yep.
So I have
Yep.
like an Iowa State Kale Sanderson wrestling camp T-shirt.
Yeah.
I need to show it to him next like
Yeah.
media availability. I think he
Well,
might get a kick
did
out
you
of
get a
it.
chance to know Brian Smith well?
Just through interviews.
Okay.
Obviously just kind of being a college kid and being young. I was in high school, I think, when Ben Askren was at
Yes.
Mizzou. So they had a nice come up, and just
Yes.
like seeing how they, I remember interviewing him after they won the Big 12 before they
Yes.
left the conference.
Yes.
And, so I got to experience kind of his perspective on everything,
Yeah.
which was like very cool, because he was like, look, I came here, I said we were going to win this thing, and no one believed me, and then we finally
Right.
did, and
Right.
so
Right.
I think I got nothing but respect for that guy. Big Brian Smith fan. Big Brian Smith
Oh
fan.
yeah, yeah, and then I like him because you had mentioned about the fact that Jude and Sam are really good with the communication skills. Brian is like that,
Mhm.
and that's why he promotes the sport, and he is very candid, and he's
Yeah.
a heck of a coach though too.
He is. Let's see what else. I went to the rival high school, Jaden Cox.
Oh,
He went to Hickman High School in Columbia, Missouri, and
yeah,
it's it's a rivalry, but like it's a big football rivalry.
right.
And so I was closer in age to his brother Dre, and I
Oh,
remember like being in high school, and everyone's like, "Man, Dre Cox is so good."
right.
And then I'm in college, and a friend of mine did a story on Jaden after he won the
Right.
state title as a freshman at like
Right.
170 pounds. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, he's a freshman in 171. He's not as good as his brother. There's no way that weight was difficult.
Mhm.
And I couldn't have been like more wrong on like how good this kid actually was.
Right.
He was just a freshman in high school at that time.
Right.
And my friend did a story on kind of his music ability.
Oh, wow.
He plays a bunch of instruments, he can sing.
Yeah.
Kathy Cox used to sing the national anthem at all of
Yes.
like my kids club tournaments.
Yes.
So like
Yeah.
in Columbia, like every time we would go there for a tournament as a kid, Kathy Cox would bring the house down. Like it's like, how
And
lucky were we to hear that?
you've seen Jaden do the same thing, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
he's what a talented.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm biased toward wrestlers. You got to understand, Peter. I've covered all forms of sports,
Mm-hmm.
and wrestling is. As I got older, I chose to focus on wrestling, and with the magazine and stuff, because I love the athletes pretty much. They're the most candid of all the athletes I ever dealt with.
Yeah. And I think when I was in high school was the first time I heard of like flow.
Yes.
And how like, you kind of have a national media outlet
Right.
kind of, yes, in the sports corner, but also like, they're doing good stories. Like, and that's
Right.
that's the whole idea.
Right.
Like, is to find stories and to tell them. So
I agree. Now because again, it's a new medium. They had an entrepreneurial spirit.
yeah, for sure.
And I'm sure Jude told you it was their connection. They had a connection at Flow
Yeah.
that helped them out a lot, as well as a gentleman named Tony Rotundo, a photographer from California.
Yeah. Very cool.
Really. And so anyway, I hope Jude and Sam continue this. And so yeah. And of course, the Olympic trials will eventually be in State College.
Yeah, I was supposed to. I had to go out of town. I was supposed to be out of town that weekend, and so I was telling the other two people in our department, I was like, hey guys, like, I'm not going to be here for this. You're going to have to brush up on some things. Cause like, you know, we had a girl come in, out of college and didn't know anything about wrestling. And I spent the entire year sending her to high school wrestling meets because I knew she'd have to cover state at the end of the year. And so you just got to have a basic knowledge. And like, yeah, she made some mistakes, but you know, she did a good job. And now I'm like, okay, if you're going to cover the Olympic trials, it's completely different. All the rules are different. So it's like,
it is. It is.
so, you
It
know,
is.
but I think hopefully I'll be able to, I'll be available to cover it.
I hope so. I hope so, Peter.
Yeah.
Hey, so Peter, when are you running the story on the kids?
Yeah. So I have like a kind of a preview at 5 today, and then another
Okay.
preview at 6, and then the full story at 11. It'll, you know, it's a TV package. It'll be like a minute and a half. I mean, during this time, I can go a little bit longer. We don't have much else. So
yeah, I like to just take some of it and put on our social media once I see it.
yeah, for sure.
And promote it as well, because again, especially for these kids, anything for these guys. This is great.
Yeah. All right. I appreciate it. That's all I got. Thank you so much.
Okay. You bet,
Yeah.
Peter. All the best to you, sir.
All right. You
Okay.
too. Thank you. Bye-bye.